This video today is a kind of a just random. Nothing in particular. I've got a few ideas, but I just wanted to touch bases with you. For starters, not that it really has much of anything to do with anything, but it's a thought that I came up with, and I thought maybe you can relate to it. But what it has to do is with false teachings or false prophets or false spirituality or corrupt teachings, or however you want to look at it. And of course, I suppose I could be accused of that also in certain areas, possibly. I don't know. But so how it come about is, you know, when you are specialized in something, and by the way, everyone is specialized in something as they become an adult. Even if they're not able to communicate well with what their specialty is, they are specialized in something. So let me give you an example. A person goes through high school, they learn all the basics, and everybody, generally speaking, is on the same playing field, so to say. But then you get a career, a job, or whatever it may be. Whatever it is that you decide is your hobby, that's a good way of looking at it. So maybe you're a hobbyist that goes out looking for rocks, and you spend several years studying rocks and geology, and you like crystals and all that kind of stuff. Okay, that's one hobby. Another hobby might be basketball. So you love basketball and you get very good at it after a while because it's your hobby. It's what you enjoy to do in your life. And you become very expertise on basketball. Let's say a mother goes to high school, married or not married, it doesn't matter, but let's say she decides she really is enthused about becoming a mother well before she becomes a mother. And she studies and she asks questions and wants to know the best way of raising a child and everything. And then she gets pregnant, has a child, she learns, her mother helps her teach her child and everything. And 10 years later, or even 20 years later, she would be considered expert in her field, more so than people with PhDs that have never had a child. So you get where I'm going with this. And what I mean by this is, of course, for me personally, yeah, I have a lot of different things that I'm expert in. But predominantly, the most expert that I'm in is spirituality. And the reason is simply because it has always been, as far back as I can remember as a little child, a proclivity of mine. It's something that I have very much desired to learn and study. And on that path, you go through different phases where you think, wow, this is sad because you can't learn anymore. There's no more information. And then you find another methodology of finding more spiritual truth. And then you do that for several years, and then again you hit a plateau and you go, well, sadly, I have studied everything and I know everything about this particular side of religion, spirituality. You've read the Bible dozens of times. And I won't say it becomes boring, but because it's never boring. But what it is frustrating because you want to know more truth. You want to know more about that. And then magically, or just because God loves you and you love God, you find another methodology, or you find a different teacher. And that goes on and on and on. And that has been my path for 6 decades. And so I would consider myself uniquely expert in that field. And so how I'm trying to relate it to you is how I witness or see others that are teaching. And it's like, for instance, let's say you're a basketball enthusiast, and you have really, you played basketball throughout your life, and maybe you're a coach now or whatever, and you see or hear other people teaching, maybe YouTube videos or whatever, and you watch and everything, and it's like, why are they doing this? I don't understand why they have put themselves out there to teach about basketball and they just don't know what they're talking about. If I were to be derogatory, I would say they're absolute idiots. And what in the hell is the point of them going out there on the limb and making themselves to be a professional or an authoritarian on teaching about basketball, and they have no clue what they're doing? They're idiots. But that seems to be the process. I wonder, and in this video, it's more like a conversation between you and I, even though you're not interacting with me, because I'm not coming on as an authoritarian. I'm giving you my opinion, and then you can put that through your mind and in your heart and in your soul and see how it relates to you personally as an individual. So what I mean by that is myself, I see so many videos by so-called experts in their field, or they don't want to call themselves experts, and nobody does. That's just a term for engineering and stuff like that. But an authority figure, or a knowledgeable figure, or they might even be referred to as an enlightened spiritual teacher, or very aware, or you know the words I'm referring to. And I see so many of them out there that they have self-imposed themselves, and kind of like, in a way, I'm doing the same exact thing, going, see me, I'm a teacher, I'm telling you what the truth is. The difference is, I not only am not doing it for money, power, or authority, I'm only doing it because of one reason, and one reason only. I love God. And as a byproduct of loving God, I love you, and I love those that love God. And because of that, you know how one of the things attributed to the teachings of Jesus said, you do not put a candle under a bushel and hide that light. Well, I'm not hiding my light. I'm broadcasting it as best I can to shed light. Those that want that particular light, they can use it free of charge. And that's essentially what I am doing. And what I'm talking about is I see so many people teaching the esoteric spiritual things. And I'm not bad-mouthing those that are religious teachers teaching the Bible or teaching the truths in the Vedas and stuff like. I'm not being derogatory or speaking badly about those particular people, because they're like a teacher. They're not teaching you things that are unprovable, so to say. They're just teaching you the basics. It's like going to grade school or high school or even college. They're teaching you the basics that everyone should know. But when you get to the enlightened phase of spirituality, it is no longer a generic understanding of the esoteric nature of spirituality. It's no longer in written form anywhere in the world. I mean, like, you could track down, or you could try to track down the source for what caused Buddha to be enlightened, and you'd never find it. And you could track down the source that caused Jesus to be unique in his way, and you'd never find it. And Krishna, you'd never find it. And it's simply because it not only has never been available on the earth in a written format, it can't be in a written format. It has to be, you know how they say the gospel is the living gospel is how they refer to it as. Well, of course it isn't the living gospel, it's the dead gospel. But the living gospel does exist, but not in the way that people think it exists. The living gospel is actually coming out of the mouth of a living human being that is connected, spiritually speaking, to Christ. And that would be referred to as the living gospel. But the living gospel is never going to measure up to or conform to the written gospel, because the written gospel is dead. And so you're not going to get the living truth from a dead source. And that's just the way it is. And so you learn and you learn and you learn, and at some point you reach the pinnacle of what is available in this physical world, and you must step out and take it on faith, whatever you want to call it, but you're going to have to step out into the spiritual realm where there's no footing for you. There's nowhere to stand. You're on your own, so to say. Okay, on your own. I like that. That's the segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about. My brother and I were speaking the other day. You know, when I say the other day, it's been probably a month ago or a couple of weeks ago, whatever. And we were talking about concepts of dimensionality. You know how we talk about we live in the third dimension, and we not only live in the third dimension, but we basically function in the fourth dimension, even though we physically live in a three-dimensional reality. But in reality, if there are 7 billion people, and maybe now they say 8 billion people, there are essentially 8 billion dimensions, because every human being is a different dimension. Well, that's not entirely true, because human beings that are not real human beings, meaning demons, not necessarily even demons, but some that might be referred to as demons. For instance, Satan or Shiva has the ability to clone himself in such a way it would be similar to creating a computer. So a computer is not a independent thinking machine. It can only function based upon its programming. It isn't self-aware. And it, of course, will never be self-aware, regardless of the idiots that say computers will eventually become self-aware. No, they won't. They'll never become self-aware. That is a false teaching by idiots that don't understand the nature of self-aware. But Satan has the ability of creating souls or spirits from his own being that could be compared to a computer. And so you have human beings that are, for lack of better understanding, called demons. And these demons function, and they seem to be exactly like human beings, and just like you and I and everything. And in fact, they are human beings, because I'm a human being and so are you. But in reality, we're not human beings. You and I, we're spiritual essences that have independent, infinite ability for change, growth, and development, whereas a created thing can never exceed the creator. Does that make sense? So consequently, whatever Shiva/Satan creates cannot exceed himself. And so these demons are always going to be inferior to the creator, but they are not self-aware to the extent that the concept of self-aware applies, if that makes any sense. So what I mean by that, so consequently, let's say there's 8 billion human beings on the planet. Well, let's just take a figure and say 4 billion of them are demonic or have given their souls up, so to say, and so they're no longer independent thinking essences like you and I. So if we take 4 billion out of the 8 billion, that leaves 4 billion human beings, so that would be 4 billion dimensions, so to say, because every human being that is based upon an essence is their own dimension. Because when you and I communicate, we're not having perfect communication, you and I. There's no way to have perfect communication between us, but we're doing the best we can. And that's why I predominantly try to teach you how to stand on your own 2 feet, spiritually speaking, meaning enlightenment, God enlightenment, Buddha enlightenment, any of these things that I speak of. When you get to that point or attain that in your life, well, even before that, you are standing on your own 2 feet, spiritually speaking, and you are in direct communication, whether you know it or not. You are in direct communication with the Creator. Not Christ, but Brahma, the God that Jesus prayed to. You are in direct contact with that God, with that deity, with the Creator of all things. Then you are on a footing that has a connection to absolute truth. And when you do that, your message and my message, if we get them independent of each other from this God, you and I are going to get the same truth, but we're going to understand it a little differently from each other because you are in a different dimension than I am. Does that make sense? So if there's 4 billion different dimensions, whatever truth we get, we're going to interpret that truth just a little differently because we are in a different dimension. And it is our objective to purify ourselves over the course of millions and millions of creations to become more like God and to become one with God so that we are eternally with God, if that's something you desire. So I think the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm not going to be able to put this in words very well, because I've looked at it many times on my iPad, what I wrote, and every single time I try to put it in my head in such a way that I can communicate it to you, it's like, man, that's difficult. But I'm going to take a stab at it, and hopefully God will put words in my mouth that will communicate to you what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, you know how I refer to God enlightenment, and you know how I refer to Buddha enlightenment. And what I wanted to relate to you is how they complement each other. Don't think that they are opposed to each other. They absolutely complement each other. However, most people throughout history have only obtained or gained one form of enlightenment and not the other. And that would be because predominantly enlightenment comes in the form of Buddha enlightenment. And Buddha enlightenment most people, when they become enlightened, the rest of their life is focused upon the nature of reality, meaning they know from their own independent self that reality is an illusion. They've experienced this to the point where, when I say experience, it's not a physical experience, but that's the word we use. But it's not physical, it's spiritual. But you know how when you physically experience smashing your thumb with a hammer, that is, you make no mistake, and you smash your thumb with a hammer, nobody can convince you that that didn't happen. You know it happened, and you know exactly what it is that happened. So from a spiritual standpoint, that's why I say Buddha enlightenment is an experience. It is a spiritual experience similar to a physical experience. And so if you can relate to that, then you'll understand that when I say Buddha enlightenment is the spiritual proof that this physical reality is an illusion and there's no reality to it whatsoever beyond the concept of it being an illusion, an imagination, a dream, if you will. So what is God enlightenment? It's the same scenario that I just spoke about with Buddha enlightenment. The difference being is it's a spiritual experience of God in such a way that there's zero faith involved after that point. In other words, you know how faith is like, well, I believe in God, and I believe it because I feel it in my heart, and I believe in God because of my faith, and I believe in God, blah, 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 blah. And that goes on. And then for some people, their belief gets even stronger and stronger because they'll go, well, I prayed to God, and after I got done praying, I felt the Spirit of God. And then sometimes it even gets stronger, like I prayed to God for a miracle, and instantly a miracle occurred. And then it builds their faith even stronger. And then 100 times over the course of several years, these certain individuals will say, without fail, every time I pray with faith to God, miracles manifest. And others can say, I laid my hands on the head of an individual that was sick and they got healed, and therefore my faith is even stronger in God. But still, that's faith. God enlightenment removes all faith, just like it doesn't take faith to know that your thumb got smashed when you hit it with a hammer. There's no faith involved. It's real. There's no question about it. So that's what God enlightenment is. If God were to come down and appear, let's say he just appears as a human being in front of you, and you chit chat and talk and everything, and then this God leaves you, is that God enlightenment? No, that isn't. That is probably the most profound faith-building concept, but in reality, your mind can play games 2 years later, and you could go, what if I imagined that was God 2 years ago that appeared to me? What if it was a demon that appeared to me? What if I had some sort of sickness and I imagined it? So you can see that even God appearing in a physical form isn't God enlightenment. That is just a strong faith-building episode. And that's why God does not appear to us when people go, well, why doesn't God make himself known to us? Well, because it isn't going to make a big, huge difference. It's only going to be a faith-building thing. It isn't going to bring God enlightenment. God enlightenment is it's exponentially greater than that. There's actually no comparison between that and God enlightenment. God enlightenment is the absolute knowing this particular God from a spiritual, intuitional, I don't even know how to compare it, but that's what God enlightenment is. So how do they complement each other? So that is the difficult thing that I struggled with trying to explain to you, and I'll do my best right now. God enlightenment has a way of conditioning your mind, your spirit, your soul, and everything in such a way that either before or after, I don't know if it's before or after God enlightenment, but anyways, probably before, you will build your love in your heart and soul in such a way that it's 100% love. And what I mean by that is there is no fear left in you. None whatsoever. Zero fear. And that is what takes place after God enlightenment or before. I'm not sure which way it works, but either way, there's no fear in you. With no fear, you can sit down and have a conversation with a Eastern philosophy guru speaking about Buddha enlightenment. And this particular guru, when I say this particular guru, predominantly probably 95% of all spiritual gurus are non-duality. And you can sit down there with no fear and listen to them speak, and typically, if you are in their presence and you're asking questions and it's going back and forth, typically for you, if you're God enlightened, they're going to challenge you thinking that your knowledge and understanding of God is based upon faith. And they're going to do their best to destroy your faith. And they're going to challenge you in such a way that you are going to live in fear that, oh my gosh, what if there is no God? Oh my gosh, what if? And of course, that's the concept of non-duality. That's what happens in non-duality teaching. Irrespective or irregardless of what people out there teach, they are wrong if they say they are not going to challenge your belief in God, because they do. And a normal person that is Christian-based or God-based, excuse me, is going to start introducing, is going to start introducing fear, is going to start introducing challenges to their faith in God, is going to start chipping away at their faith. And that's a scary feeling for a person that has a powerful faith in God. It's a scary feeling to be thinking, what if there is no God? What if, I don't think I have to go any deeper in that. I think you understand what I'm talking about. And so, but with God enlightenment, there's no fear. You're just like a pioneer explorer back in the day, traveling across the planet Earth where no person has ever trod before, and you don't know what to expect when you travel 1,000 miles beyond the last human being you ever saw. And what if you're on your own? Think of the fear that enters into your mind and heart and everything. My throat is dry, sorry. So that is the process that happens when you are learning Buddha enlightenment. But with God enlightenment, there's absolutely no fear. And so you don't mind moving forward. It's like, oh, well, this is an interesting concept. Let me learn, let me learn. Now, here is the process, is if you continue on that path to become Buddha enlightened, golly, I don't know what the word would be. It's not fear, but anyways, you get to a point where everything you thought was true about your belief in God and religion and all of this, it's all going to be destroyed, and you're going to be reduced to one thing and one thing only, and that is you're God enlightened. So you know there is God. And because of God enlightenment, you know you exist. So you will be reduced to giving up your hold, your faith, your beliefs in everything. It doesn't matter what it is. You will be reduced to the knowledge and knowing that there is a God because you're God enlightened, and there is a you because you cannot be God enlightened without knowing there's a you also. And that's where you're at. That would be incredibly fearful for anyone except the God enlightened. And then you pass through the veil, you pass through the whatever you want to call it, and you become Buddha enlightened. And that is when, as I said, you are now enlightened about this physical reality. You no longer have a belief, meaning from a religious standpoint, now that you're Buddha enlightened, because you've had to destroy, before you even get to Buddha enlightenment, you have to destroy your belief in heaven, for instance. A God enlightened person still believes in heaven, still believes in hell, still believes in all of these teachings, okay? But you have to give that up. You have to know with no uncertain term. Well, I mean, when you're Buddha enlightened, you know that there's no such thing as heaven. You know that it's literally impossible for there to be a heaven. You know that there's no possibility that there's a hell. But the fear doesn't exist getting to that point because you're already God enlightened. And so that's how you move forward into Buddha enlightenment. Now, how does Buddha enlightenment allow you to segue into God enlightenment? Well, that's not as easy, and the reason it's not as easy is because Buddha enlightenment typically leads to an arrogant attitude of, hey, this is not true. I'm going to say, hey, I'm better than everyone else because I'm Buddha enlightenment, Buddha enlightened. That isn't true, but it gives the idea and notion of what I'm trying to express to you, which is why Buddha enlightened people rarely, if ever, become God enlightened, because they already have this superior attitude that they know better and they know more than anyone else because they have this, they do have this superior awareness of all of reality. And so how is it possible they're going to move beyond that? It's very difficult. But what Buddha enlightenment does is, in other words, before enlightenment, again, just like I said about heaven and hell, those are spiritual things. Well, there's the spiritual reality, the physical reality. And there's light, darkness, there's radiation, there's vibrations, there's air, there's earth, there's animals, there's all of this stuff exists. And when you become Buddha enlightenment, it no longer exists. It is a figment of your imagination. Now, can the dog come up and bite your hand while you're Buddha enlightened? Of course the dog can. But you see that differently when you're enlightened. It's like, that was a very interesting episode. Yeah, my hand hurts like hell after the dog bit it, but it's not my hand. And there is no hand to be bitten. But nevertheless, that happened. And it's hard to relate between you and I what I'm speaking about, but an enlightened person would understand what I'm saying. So what I mean by that is, how does Buddha enlightenment complement God enlightenment? They went through the same process. Once they believed in a physical reality, and now they don't. So what does that do for the Buddha enlightened person? What it does is they reflect back upon their reality before becoming enlightened and after they are enlightened. And they are able to reflect upon that throughout their lifetime. And they go, yeah, I was 100% convinced beyond any shadow of a doubt that this physical reality was real. And guess what? I was wrong. That's what an enlightened person says. They don't say it, but they know it to be true. So, since they know that they 100% knew something and they were wrong, now that they're enlightened, they can relate to that concept of knowing, and that they know that they were wrong now that they're correct. If they hear someone like myself that isn't functioning on faith anymore about God and God enlightenment, and can say to their face, no, you are wrong, Mr. Enlightened Person. You do not know what you're talking about. That doesn't threaten their enlightenment status, because nothing threatens enlightenment. Nothing. It can't. So it doesn't threaten their hold upon Buddha enlightenment. What it does is it introduces a concept reality that they thought they knew 100% because they're enlightened. In other words, they extrapolate. They go, oh, I'm enlightened, so I know what reality is. And I used to think I knew what physical reality was, but now I do know what it is. What about this spiritual concept of God? I thought I knew what God was. And what if that guy is correct? And of course, that will threaten their belief in non-duality. In other words, they believe that they are an aspect of God. They are God in essence, and they can't move beyond that without having something to introduce the concept that no, your concept of non-duality is not correct. I mean, it is to a certain extent, but beyond that extent, it is not. And I haven't even touched the surface of Brahman, Brahman. I always spell it because it's so close to Brahma, meaning the God that Jesus prayed to. But I haven't even scratched the surface yet. I haven't even touched the surface of Brahman, which is where, I can't even say where because it's not a where, but it is don't make the mistake of believing that Brahman is an awareness or an aware being or a God or anything like that. It isn't. It's like you understand the concept of darkness, In other words, what is darkness? Darkness is nothing, because it is the absence of light. You can say darkness is the absence of light. But what is darkness? Well, it's nothing. And yet when you remove the light, darkness is there. But darkness doesn't exist. There's no such thing as darkness. You know that. It is the absence of light. It is the absence of something. That gets you closer to understanding what Brahman is. It's like you have this dark void and you turn on the lights and then bugs appear and spiders and dogs and trucks and houses and planets and universes and spiritual things and different dimensions, and the list goes on and on and on. Well, you can say, well, where did it all come from? Because before the light was turned on, nothing existed. Now you can say in our physical realm, of course it existed, you just didn't see it. But that's not the way to relate to Brahman. The better way to relate to it is as the conceptual idea that there isn't anything there. In other words, darkness is nothing. And yet, when you turn the light on, you can see the light and the darkness leaves. That's so bizarre that I can speak about that and cover that topic 1,000 times, 1,000 different ways. And most people are going to not get it, but they get closer and closer and closer and closer. And then all of a sudden, boom, they lose the whole damn concept. And they go, wait a second, I thought I understood something for a while. And then I just lost the whole damn thing. Do you know how that works, spiritually speaking? I mean, I'm sure you must be able to relate to that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching this video because, you know, most people on this spiritual path will go through that process numerous times on so many different levels and on so many different conceptual ideas. They build and they build and they build and they build and they go, wow, I'm starting to get it. Wow, it's in my head. Oh my gosh, that's so... Oh my gosh, I just lost it all. That is so damn frustrating. So if you can relate to that, recognize that that's normal and that's just the process of becoming enlightened, becoming more aware. It's the process because the physical brain can't contain spiritual concepts. And that's why you lose it. It's like, oh, I had it. Oh, it's gone. I'm going to have to build it up again somehow. It's because, like I said, the brain can't contain these spiritual ideas and thoughts. You have to inculcate it. You have to get that through the physical brain and into your heart and soul and mind. This is the last thing I wanted to talk about. Dreams. You know how dreams are kind of random and stuff like that? Well, think about dreams as, you know what? They're not random. Nothing is random. Maybe you don't understand them, but that doesn't mean they're random and they don't mean anything. Everything means something. Every dream means something. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're responsible for those dreams. Any more than you're responsible for driving down the road and you look off to your side and you see someone shoot someone dead. Just because you saw someone shot dead doesn't mean you're responsible for that death just because you looked out your window as you're going down the freeway. There wasn't anything you could do about it. You just saw it. The point being is, what does that mean? What is that mean to you that you saw it? How do you incorporate that view, that vision, that dream at night to mean something to you? Because nothing is wasted, nothing is random, nothing means nothing. Everything means something. And even if you don't understand it at this point in your life, it means something. So, pay attention to that kind of stuff and contemplate those things. And so when you wake up in the morning and you had a dream, think about it. Even though it might be frustrating that you have no clue what it means, recognize nothing. You saw that dream for a reason, even though you may not be responsible for it. When I say may, some dreams you are responsible for. Some dreams are meant to be visions and revelations and things to help you, guide you throughout your life and throughout your eternity. But other things are just things that you see in a dream, and it means something. It's like a puzzle. It's just something to help you in your life, to help you figure out what is going on. Everything means something. And so with that, I'm going to close. Next week is Christmas, apparently, and I've been so busy doing things. So if I don't get back to you before that, I'm going to wish you a Merry, Happy Christmas. I hope that you are able to see your loved ones. I hope that you are blessed in your life. And I'm going to close by saying I love you. And hope you got something out of this. And as always, I will pray for everyone. Why not? I love you. You're my friends. Why wouldn't I pray for you? I know that some of you pray for me, and I appreciate that. Anyways, I love you, and I'll talk with you guys in the next video. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Bye.